All right, so 2019's Knives Out is written and directed by Rian Johnson, who a lot of people know for directing The Last Jedi, which a lot of people hated on him for. But 2 years later, he made Knives Out, and honestly, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. Probably in my top 10. I don't know for sure if I put it in my top 10 when I made that video for my channel, but yeah, I love this movie. I've seen it many times. And for those of you who are not familiar with this movie, it is a modern take on the classic whodunit murder mystery. It stars Daniel Craig as Detective Blanc, and he is basically the American version of Sherlock Holmes in this movie, which is funny because he is actually British in real life. But yeah, he has this southern drawl, which also the accent in here that he has is a little bit weird, and it kind of goes back and forth between sounding mostly authentically southern and then a little bit just like, maybe a British guy trying to do a southern accent. But for the most part, it doesn't take me out of the movie, it doesn't distract me, and I do think he's great in the film. Also in the cast, we have Ana de Armas as Marta Cabrera, we have Jamie Lee Curtis as Linda Drysdale, we have Michael Shannon as Walt Thrombey, Don Johnson as Richard Drysdale, we have Christopher Plummer as Harlan Thrombey, Tony Collette as Joni Thrombey, Chris Evans as Ransom Drysdale. We have Catherine Langford as Meg Thrombey, Jada Martell as Jacob Thrombey, and Ricky Lindholm as Donna Thrombey. I think that's pretty much the main cast there. Also in there is Lakeith Stanfield as Lieutenant Elliot, which is an actor I very much like in a lot of different movies and shows that he's been in. So cool to see him here, but he doesn't really have a huge role. But yeah, Rian Johnson, I think, directed and wrote this film incredibly. It has great writing, great cast, great acting, great cinematography, great everything all around, honestly. There's very few complaints I have about this movie. However, just to start off, I'll give you a couple. There's some things in this movie, and it's a murder mystery, so there's some aspects of the mystery that don't completely feel like they add up. I'm not going to go into too many specific, or really any specifics, to be honest, because I'm sure a lot of people clicking on this video have watched the movie, but for those of you who haven't, I don't want to give anything away because this being one of my favorite movies, I don't want to give anything away for something I really want people to go watch, especially since the sequel is coming out, but I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I mean, there's just so many twists and turns in this film, and there's things that you wouldn't expect from a movie like this, and that's what sets it apart from so many other movies like this. You have films like Death on the Nile and Murder on the Orient Express, and those films, while they have a really great cast, neither of them, you know, did really great box office wise, critically, and personally for me, I don't like either of those films. Um, Death on the Nile, I honestly think, is one of the worst movies of this year, which is interesting because it seems like the sequel is kind of going in a similar route of the of Death on the Nile. So we'll see how that turns out. But again, I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But in this film, you have Detective Blanc, who is, investigating this suicide of Harlan Thrombey, played by Christopher Plummer, which I believe that actor has passed away now, so rest in peace to Christopher Plummer. Great actor there. But yeah, basically there's a little bit more to it than you might think. And the one main thing I'll say about this movie is that not everything is quite as it seems. That's the biggest thing I will give away when you watch the movie. Maybe that statement in and of itself is giving away too much. But I mean, when it comes to the mystery itself, you find certain things out a little bit earlier on. And even that, I feel like I'm saying too much, but like, it just, again, sets itself apart from so many other movies like this. I mean, immediately when you think of a movie like this, at least for me, I think of Clue. And it just takes such a interesting concept that we've seen so many times and just kind of turns it on its head and says, what if we look at it from this perspective? And that's the thing I love about this movie most, is like subverting your expectations and then making you think you know where it's headed, and then subverting your expectations again. This movie does so many things incredibly well and very few things incredibly wrong, I guess you could say. But yeah, like I said, just some of the kind of, I wouldn't even call them plot holes, but there's just some minor things in there where I'm like, well, if you're telling me this, then why doesn't this happen? And like, how did that one person have enough time to do this in between this? Like, how did they, and how did they know to do this? Like, this was a spur of the moment thing. So how did they know to do this and have this prepared, um, prior, it's stuff like that. And if you've watched the movie, maybe you know what I'm talking about, but it's such a small thing that most people probably don't notice it. It's just for me personally, who has watched this movie so many times, where I'm like, and this is just upon my rewatching that I just watched, like finished watching like 5 minutes ago or so. Um, there was something in there where I'm like, huh, I haven't really noticed that before, but like, why though? And there's some things in here that feel like kind of a parody of movies like this. And when it comes to parodies, especially for me, I'm kind of dumb sometimes. So I don't always know when there's supposed to be a parody of something. It's sometimes a little bit hard for me to tell when, maybe it's just because I haven't seen like a bunch of films in a particular, genre or subgenre, so I don't get the niche reference, but like there's some parodies that I just don't necessarily get a whole lot of get a whole lot out of. Um but this, I mean, I wouldn't say this is a parody by any means. This movie stands on its own. I would say the character of Detective Blanc, played by Daniel Craig, his character is just crazy. He is, I don't even know how to describe him, but the whole time he's talking about the donut and the hole in the center of the donut and shit like that, and the hole in the center of the hole, and I'm just like, the fuck are you talking about? But that's kind of what makes his character fun, is like most of the time you don't know what the hell he's talking about, but in his head he knows what the hell he's talking about, and that's kind of the fun part of it. Some people might look at that as lazy writing, like you're just being weird for the sake of weird. I'm like, no, that's just how his brain works, and I love it because at the end of the day, he solves the mystery. I mean, does he not? He might have weird tactics, but they work. So his character he's really fun. But the main character I would definitely say of this movie is Ana de Armas, who plays Marta Cabrera. Very great character there. She's the nurse to Harlan Thrombey. Really the only friend that he can really talk to. She's the only sane person in that household that he lives in with all his family. Literally everybody in the family is just the worst person you've ever met. There's a couple in there where you're like, maybe they're not too bad, but for the most part, they're all a-holes. And they all, had a lot of shit handed to them and don't like it when anybody tells them no. But yeah, you have all these characters in here, and from the very beginning, you're like, any of these people could have done it. And the whole thing about it is like Harlan, it seems like he committed suicide. And if that's the case, why is the detective there? Why are there cops there? I mean, the cops make sense for the most part, but the detective there is like, why are they running a full investigation if it's a suicide? But I guess maybe in the real world, I guess they actually do have to do that and make sure it's not like, you know, a cover up or anything like that. But yeah, there's just a couple small inconsistencies that might not even be inconsistencies to me, but there's so many different things in this movie that piece together and come together by the end, and you're like, oh my god, this makes sense now, and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I didn't think of that before. Like, I mean, that's the basis of any good murder mystery, is having all these pieces come together and make it feel earned, and this movie does that incredibly. So I mean, if you're into murder mysteries, if you're into mysteries at all, this is the movie for you. If you're not, this might even still be the movie for you. I don't know. It might subvert your expectations and do, like, if you're not a fan of murder mysteries or mysteries in general, this might turn you around a little bit on it. So maybe worth watching. I would consider it. But yeah, let me see if I have any other notes here. I don't think I do. Um, Let me see here. The only real complaint I have is like maybe it's just a little bit longer than it needs to be, just a tad bit longer. I think if they probably took out like 5 minutes even, it would feel a little bit more tight. But overall, I mean, that's a really small complaint. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, obviously there is a sequel to Knives Out coming to Netflix. Actually, the day this video is being posted is when it comes out. My review should come out tomorrow as the day of this is posted. Sorry, it's like past 2 a.m. right now. I'm a little loopy. But as the day this is posted should come out tomorrow, my review for the sequel for Knives Out, Glass Onion, which does have a limited release in theaters. Not going to be watching it there, just going to watch it on Netflix. But it will be released on Netflix and theaters in the same day, which is November 23rd, Wednesday. So, yeah, stay tuned for that review. But I'm very excited for that sequel. I'm a little bit nervous for it. And like I said before, I think I said this before, but it seems to follow kind of something similar that Death on the Nile did, which is a movie in the same genre that came out earlier this year. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, Netflix bought this franchise, the rights to this franchise, and I believe along with Glass Onion, the sequel to Knives Out, that I'll be reviewing tomorrow, there's going to be 2 to 3 more Knives Out movies coming to Netflix. I don't know if Rian Johnson will be attached to all of them, but we shall see. Very, very excited, but also hesitant going into the sequel because Knives Out being one of my favorite movies of all time, there's a lot of room for the sequel to very much disappoint me. So I'm going to go in with low to medium expectations. Hopefully it doesn't disappoint. But yeah, stay tuned for that review. But have you seen Knives Out 2019? What did you think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you in the middle? I definitely love this movie. One of my favorites of all time, as I said before. Probably in my top 10. And have you not seen Knives Out? Are you going to plan on watching it before the sequel? Why or why not? Honestly, even if you say no, please just consider watching this movie. I've recommended it to so many people. It's one of my favorites. It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of stuff. Even if you hear even if you like map out some things, if you figure out some things, you're still having fun throughout it, and there's still surprises to be had, even if you map out certain things. So, like, I mean, it's worth your time for sure. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, I have a new ranking system when it comes to reviewing movies and TV shows and whatnot. Usually I would just review something and rank it 1 out of 10. But now I have a new system here. And if you haven't watched the past like 5 videos or so, then you haven't actually seen me go through this ranking system. But if you have, this isn't anything new for you. So you can really leave if you want, but then you won't hear where I rank this movie. But yeah, let me go through it as quickly as possible. I'm going to go through the different tiers and the descriptions. Starting with the best, leave your house immediately. And if it's a movie that's been out for years or something on streaming, or if it's a TV show, kind of has the same effect. Turn on your TV immediately, watch it immediately. This is a very rare tier of me to use, so if I use it, you'll know I mean it. Tier below that is weekend plans. Watch opening weekend or watch the first weekend it's out. When it comes to like a movie that's been out for a while, just basically get around to it when you get a chance, like, make it the next movie you watch, that's the kind of thing I'm going for there. But yeah, essentially watch it the first weekend it's out, if it's anything new. Tier below that is avoid the crowds. Wait a couple weeks to watch it in the theater and go on weekday if you can. Go when the theater might be empty, because then you don't have to worry about assholes being really loud with their popcorn or whatever it might be. But yeah, when it's like a movie on streaming or anything like that, add it to your list. Wait a couple weeks. Nothing urgent. Tier below that, rent it, pay to watch it at home. So, get it on VOD, wherever, Redbox, do that kind of stuff. Tier below that, stream it. If it appears on a streaming service you already own, then consider checking it out, add it to your list. But if it's on a streaming service you don't own, then don't make it a priority to buy that streaming service just to watch it. But yeah, tier below that is last week's leftovers, and you'll notice as the tiers get worse, the crazier they get. But yeah, last week's leftovers description I have here is might not be completely horrible, but you might regret it later. It's the kind of movie you pop into the DVD player and you're like, all right, I heard this movie's shitty, but it might be funny to watch. And then by the time you finish it, you're like, well, that was about an hour and 45 minutes just wasted. But it's not as bad as it could be, It's not going to kill you. Tier below that is throw it in the trash. Those leftovers have turned. This is the kind of movie that you get done watching and you're like, wow, I think the rest of my day might be ruined, possibly into the next day. But yeah, tier below that is throw it in the trash and set it on fire. This is when it like ruins your week or like your whole month or like, it ruins relationships with your family. But yeah, it's pretty much as bad as it gets. But yeah, there's even a tier below that. One more tier. And this is as bad as it gets, probably just as rare as the leave your house immediately tier, if not more, and that is the Chernobyl level disaster. And my description for that is, how did this get made? If this is your favorite movie or show, seek medical attention immediately. So there's my new ranking system. I don't know how concrete it's going to be. I don't know if I'm going to change things over time, but for now, this is what it's going to be. And I'll be kind of telling you guys about this ranking system over the next few videos or so. We'll see how many more videos I mention this in, because it does add a lot to runtime in terms of my videos. But in terms of Knives Out 2019, obviously it's already been out for a while, so you could either pay to watch it on VOD or find it on a streaming service. I'm not sure if it's on Netflix. I would imagine it would be, but I watch it personally on Vudu, which is where I own it. But yeah, I would say in terms of the ranking, I'm not going to give it a leave your house immediately, even though it is one of my favorite movies of all time. Is it one of the best movies ever created? I don't think so, but it is a really fun movie to watch and one of my favorites, and it's something I'd recommend to a lot of people. So I would go ahead and give it a weekend plans. So if you're going to watch the sequel, I'd recommend watching this one first. Even if it doesn't have a whole lot of importance to the sequel. So yeah, maybe over the weekend you're like, hey, I want to go check out that, or I want to go watch that Glass Onion movie in the theater, or you're like, oh, I want to go watch Glass Onion on Netflix. Watch Knives Out first. Do a double feature. Watch it over the weekend. It'll be fun. But yeah, that's where I'd rank Knives Out 2019. And I'd love to know where you guys would rank it as well. Comment down below. But thank you all for watching. Leave a like on the video, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload, and I will see you in the next one.